So, Mike, you know, right, that abundance is my passion. It's my purpose. And Threads, this clothing label, and you wear it very, very well.
Yeah, it's a fire clothing label.
There you go. It really is, for me, the billboard for abundance. So, I want to ask you, what does abundance mean to you?
Yeah. I think one of the things that is like a natural difference between where we are in the
Mm.
world, in Africa, and the rest of the world is that we don't look at who we are or what we have purely on the basis of material possessions.
I agree.
And when we begin to think about the quality of our lives, we don't link it to the quantity of stuff we have. So when I think about abundance in my mind, I think I have a bias because I'm young. Abundance for me is a space where youth are able to translate their potential into reality.
Absolutely, where we can integrate all voices like the ones we can now hear on this video right now.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I
Exactly.
think the challenge that we have is that the rest of the world has gotten used to operating with a scarcity mindset. And that scarcity mindset, unfortunately, does not include, it excludes, it extracts.
And I think that is an important distinction that you make, because there's this view from the Eurocentric perspective that there's a fixed pie, and the more people I bring in, the smaller the pie gets for me. Whereas our approach on the continent to abundance is that the bigger and the larger the community becomes, the more available resources there are for each individual to benefit. And I think the bedrock of that is the belief that human beings and Ubuntu is in its core expresses this, have value and resources that they bring just by their presence there. And as a community grows and as more people put their hands in the pie, they actually begin to bake more. Exactly. And the pie gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, or make more pies,
Precisely.
right? Or why do you want to make pies? Maybe you can make something else. And it is that, right? It's not about the individual alone. Yes, of course, the individual must rise, but it's the individual that rises with the community, because the community is value and the community has value. But until you realize that community has value, you're never going to realize that community is value. And part of abundance is that. It really is about unlocking potential and unlocking abundance and freeing capacity of the individual and the community so that we all thrive. Because here's the challenge we have with the scarcity mindset, and I'm so tired of it, is that the scarcity mindset never brings everybody along. And we always say, leave no one behind.
And it's interesting you say that, because when you think about abundance and you shift from thinking about individuals alone to how do we create communities that can solve their problems, that can take care of themselves, that can imagine and dream for themselves, it actually liberates the individual when you do that. Because
Absolutely.
the bedrock of the scarcity mindset is, as you say, the individual believing they are not enough.
Exactly.
And that they need some kind of external savior,
Mm-hmm.
or they need someone outside of themselves. Or in the African context, that we need someone from Europe or something from Europe in terms of ideas, technology, capacity, in order for us to solve our problems. And at the cornerstone of how we think about abundance here in Africa is that if there is a problem that you identify, you are most likely the answer to that problem.
Absolutely.
You are carrying the solution. And where you see a deficiency, you have the productive capability to produce, to dream, to reimagine, and create the environment you want.
Yeah.
And in that process, you realize that by empowering and liberating communities, you actually empower and liberate individuals.
Yeah, I actually think that it is the era of Africa. And you're a young African, so what makes you excited about the future of Africa?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because on my way here, the Uber driver was a young person. And our conversation went to, do you realize how powerful we could be if we stood together? And I was saying to him that, I've reached this space where there isn't a young African on the continent that can be my enemy, regardless of what they think, political views, passions, etc., whatever it is, because I recognize and realize that our deliverance, our liberation, the moment where we are able to fulfill our own destinies and define who we are as we once did, is by leveraging the capability and the capital of an abundance of people.
Absolutely.
And that's what excites me is, the world looks at us and says, well, there's going to be hundreds of millions of young Africans, and this must be a disaster. It will end in disasters because there aren't enough Oxfords and Harvards for us to train them.
They call us the youth bomb.
Exactly. And what you realize is that, well, actually, knowledge and creativity and innovation is not in an Oxford or a Harvard, or even in a WITS or a UCT. It's actually in the streets. It's in places like this, where we're filming, where you see young entrepreneurs, young creatives who are taking what's in their hand and creating the world they dream of.
Yeah, in fact, I'm trying to role model that myself. We're sitting here, we're having a video. The videographer, he owns his own business, small business. The social media person that works with me, he owns his own business. The lady that does the designs, she runs her own business. All the young Black Africans trying to make it out there on their own. But entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard specifically because of that scarcity mindset. And so now I'm going into a t-shirt brand because I want people to see abundance on their billboard, on their chest, because if they can see it, I hope that they can be it and they can believe it. And I think that you are a role model for abundance. So I would like you to tell everybody, what is it that you do? I mean, what would you say is Mike's story?
I mean, it's an interesting question you ask. I think what I would like to believe I do is I try to create environments where people can fully live out who they want to be and fully exercise their potential. And I think in various ways I've tried to do that, whether it's activism, whether it's education or learning, and now in technology and in artificial intelligence. And specifically, what we're doing now is we want to create a platform that allows any young African anywhere to be able to learn for life, so gain a skill, to be able to generate income, preferably through entrepreneurship or through connecting to entrepreneurs, and also for them to be able to stay healthy. So our big bet is, if you can think and you can stay healthy, and we can give you a resource, a platform where it's safe and where you have the freedom to fail, because it's only in great failure that you end up having great success, that we'll be able to leverage this youth boom, and we'll be able to make sure that it's not a bomb, because our absolute advantage in a world where everyone's holding on to their absolute advantage, and whether it's in the West, where you're seeing people clamp down on capitalism and talk about tariffs, or in the East, where you're having people saying, well, how do we distinguish ourselves? Our absolute advantage in Africa is people. Yeah. And not just number of people, but our ability to leverage being connected to each other.
Yeah, in fact, I remember you said once that people think that our wealth is underground, our gold, our platinum, all of those things. But our wealth is actually above ground. It's our human potential. And we're sitting in a place very close to Con Hill.
Yeah.
And a reminder of our struggle heroes of the past. But we have a new struggle hero, right? We have a new freedom fighter. It's our entrepreneurs, it's our young people ready to take on the world. And I hope also ready to teach the world that there is a better way, that it's not the way of scarcity, that it's the way of abundance.
And it's beautiful that you say that, because especially as young people, whenever we speak, we do recognize that we are a generation that inherited revolution and that is still in a revolution.
Yes.
When we look at the fact that 95% of the children who die from malaria are on the African continent, when we look at the levels of poverty on the continent, when we look at the wars taking place on the continent right now in the east of the DRC and in Sudan that don't get the same notoriety as the rest of the world, we recognize that we are a continent that requires revolution, or as Fanon put it, that requires to discover its destiny as a generation, fulfill it or betray it. And it's interesting that you go into what liberation looks like and what does it mean to be a freedom fighter, because in many instances, I think the role of every young African in our generation, I think a role that we all accept, and all the entrepreneurs in the room helping us shoot this video except is that we have to be the freedom fighters. But the question is, what is our struggle? And if the architecture and infrastructure of oppression shifts, then the nature of the freedom fighter should shift as well. Samora Michelle says, a luta continua. It's like, so the struggle continues. And then he asks, well, contra quest, like against what? And I think you've hit the nail on the head when you said there is a new type of freedom fighter. In a country where there is so much food scarcity, becoming a farmer and teaching people how to grow their own food, that is being a freedom fighter.
I agree.
In a country with mass unemployment, starting a business and employing people, that is what it looks like to be a freedom fighter. In a country where people can't access health, thinking about technology or becoming a doctor or figuring out how to make healthcare more accessible, that is part of liberation. So to answer your question around what we do, I think, and you're part of our business as well, I think what we are at the core is we are gathering freedom fighters who are using technology, who are using big data, who are using the science of the day to figure out how we can create a continent that is prosperous, that is peaceful, and that is inclusive for all who live in it.
Yeah, and doing it in a way that does not embrace scarcity, but embraces abundance. Because ultimately, our greatest differentiator is that mindset of abundance. For us, abundance is not a luxury. It's a necessity.
You're so right, because it's touched me a lot, because I hear so many of my peers thinking they're not enough. And I love that you say, I am enough, I'm more than enough, I'm abundance at work. And those three lines for me are so true to what we're trying to do, where we're saying, well, a young person doesn't need all these stamps of legitimacy, whether it's education, etc. We don't need to be co-signed by these old institutions that are in their nature exclusionary. But our belief is that if we can put opportunity in front of any young person, they can create abundance.
If we just believe in ourselves.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mike. And please do wear abundance at work and
definitely
the role model that you are.
I don't think you have to convince me to wear this t-shirt. It's very nice. And I think it will get me a lot of street cred. So I think the message is beautiful. The brand is beautiful. And I think it expresses abundance. The fact that it's made in Africa, designed by Africans. And I think part of abundance is also understanding that we are not eternal and that we are transitory and we borrow the future from those who are going to be there. So thank you to you, Dr. Roze, for being an ambassador of abundance, a visionary of abundance, and being an elder who creates spaces of abundance for the next generation.
Never felt so good to be an elder. Thank you.
Thank you.